throwaway for obvious reasons. I, male, 32, just changed the locks on my sister, female, 27, after finding out she's been lying about everything for 8 months. Okay, so I'm really upset typing this out. I probably look like a total psycho, but I swear once you hear the whole story, you'll understand why I did what I did. I don't normally do stuff like this. I'm actually super conflict avoidant most of the time, but I just couldn't take it anymore yesterday. For some background, my parents got divorced when I was 16 and Megan was 11. I ended up living with our dad while she went with our mom. I watched my dad build his contracting business from nothing, working hard every day. Meanwhile, my mom and Megan always struggled with money after the divorce. Not that I'm blaming my mom. She did her best as a single mom. I worked through state university with scholarships and part-time jobs. Been at the same tech company for 6 years now. Nothing fancy, but it pays enough that I bought my house 4 years ago. Just a modest 3-bedroom in an okay neighborhood. Megan's always been different. She started like 5 different certificate programs but never finished any. She's always bouncing between retail jobs and restaurant gigs, never staying anywhere more than a few months. And then there's Jake, her on-again, off-again boyfriend who is just bad news. The kind of guy who never actually works. I never liked him, but tried to stay out of her relationship stuff. About 8 months ago, Megan showed up at my door crying. She told me Jake had gotten really mean during their breakup, and she was scared of him and had nowhere else to go since Mom moved to Florida with her new husband last year. I felt terrible for her, and before our dad passed away 3 years ago, I promised him I'd look after Megan. So I told her she could stay temporarily until she got back on her feet, with the understanding that she'd contribute financially once she found a job. After about 6 weeks of job hunting, mostly watching Netflix as far as I could tell, she said she got a receptionist position at this local marketing firm. She seemed really excited about it, talking about the company and potential to grow there. Even though she was supposedly working full-time, I was still covering everything: mortgage, utilities, groceries, internet, even her car payment. She claimed she was saving for her own place and paying off old debts. I didn't really question it at first because I make decent money, and I've always had a hard time saying no to Megan, something our dad used to point out. But over the last couple months, things started seeming weird. Her stories about work weren't adding up. She'd mention her supervisor, Mark, one day, then talk about Sarah being her boss the next. Her schedule kept changing randomly, and whenever I asked specific questions about what she actually did all day, she'd give super vague answers. Then stuff started disappearing from the house. First, it was like $60 in cash from my dresser drawer. Then my collection of rare coins from high school that I kept in my office closet. But what really got me was when my dad's vintage watch went missing. That watch meant everything to me. It was the last thing he gave me before he died. I tried confronting her about it a couple weeks ago. I noticed strange logins on our Netflix and Hulu accounts from locations I didn't recognize. I asked her about the logins from the east side of town, and she claimed it was just her at coffee shops near her office. When I pointed out some were from times she said she was in meetings, she got defensive and accused me of not trusting her. She started crying, saying I didn't trust her after everything she'd been through. I ended up backing down and apologizing. I always do this. I hate confrontation so much. She claimed she was just emotional because work was stressful. Later that night, I saw a text notification on her phone from Jay saying, "Thanks for coming over today, babe." I didn't snoop further, but it stuck with me. Last week, I ran into my old coworker Chris at a bar downtown. We were catching up, and he mentioned he'd been working at that marketing firm, the same one where Megan supposedly worked, for the past year. I casually brought up my sister working there as a receptionist, and he looked confused. Said they hadn't hired any new front desk people in at least 18 months. He was certain no one named Megan worked there. I took a day off work without telling Megan and followed her after she left for work in the morning. She drove straight to an apartment complex across town and used a key to go inside one of the units. Some Facebook stalking confirmed it was Jake's new place. I found Facebook check-ins and Instagram stories showing them together during times she told me she was at work. They never actually broke up. The whole thing was a lie. Yesterday was the final straw. I texted her asking when she'd be home, and she replied, "Working late on a big project, probably until 9 or 10. I knew she was lying. I made the decision to change all the locks that afternoon. I packed up all her stuff and moved it to a storage unit I paid for 3 months in advance. I left a detailed letter taped to the door explaining that I knew about her lies and couldn't continue housing her. I also found some pawn shop receipts in her room when I was packing her stuff. The dates matched up with when my things went missing. I'm pretty sure my dad's watch is gone forever. I turned my phone to silent and went to bed early. Woke up this morning to 19 missed calls, voicemails from confused to upset, and like 30+ text messages demanding explanations and accusing me of illegal eviction. Haven't even had the energy to listen to all the voicemails yet. I don't even know what to do now. Part of me feels guilty because she's my sister, and I promised Dad I'd look after her. But another part feels so betrayed. Did I overreact by changing the locks? Should I have confronted her first? I'm lost right now. And now some of my extended family is getting involved, saying I should work things out with her, but they have no idea what she's been doing. Edit. To clarify, since a lot of people are asking, there was no formal rental agreement between us. She never paid rent or utilities, and her name isn't on any household documents. My understanding is that makes her a guest, not a tenant, but I could be wrong about the legal specifics. I'm in Texas, if that helps. Holy crap, this blew up. Thanks for all the responses. To answer some common questions. 1. Yes, I'm 100% sure she was with Jake. There are literally pictures of them together on days she claimed to be working. 2. No, I haven't listened to all the voicemails yet. It's too much. 3. Yes, the storage unit is climate controlled and secure. 4. I'm going to talk to a lawyer tomorrow about the eviction concerns some of you raised. For those asking about my mom, we're not super close since the divorce. She moved to Florida with her new husband and basically started a new life. She's aware of the situation but just said, you two need to work it out, which is pretty much her approach to everything. Now for the first update. First of all, thank you to everyone who responded to my post yesterday. I didn't expect so many comments and messages. Sorry I haven't been able to respond to everyone directly. The last 48 hours have been absolute chaos, and I'm still trying to process everything that's happened. So after waking up to those 19 missed calls from Megan, plus like a dozen more that came in, I finally started listening to the voicemails. They were awful. The first few were just confusion. Hey, my key isn't working for some reason. Did you change the locks? Call me back. Then they quickly escalated to anger. What the actual fuck, Alex? You can't just lock me out of my home. This is illegal. Call me back right now. By the 5th or 6th message, she was full on sobbing. How could you do this to your own sister? I have nowhere to go. Is this what Dad would have wanted? For you to throw me out on the street? And then the threat started. Jake is pissed. We're coming over and you're going to have to deal with both of us. You can't just throw all my stuff out. I texted her about the storage unit, which again, I paid for 3 months, and sent her the address and code. She responded with a lot of swear words. I thought maybe that would be the end of it for the night. I was exhausted and just wanted to sleep. Big mistake. At around 1:30 a.m., I was woken up by someone pounding on my front door. Like not knocking, full on trying to break it down. I could hear yelling outside. I looked through the peephole and saw Megan and Jake standing there. Jake looked absolutely wasted and was swaying on his feet. Megan just looked furious. What happened next was scary. I called through the door telling them to leave or I'd call the police. Jake was slurring his words and yelling at me to come outside. Megan kept screaming at me to open the door while also trying to calm Jake down. I warned them I was calling 911. Jake kicked my door so hard the frame cracked. At this point, I ran back to my bedroom and called 911. While I was on the phone with the dispatcher, I heard glass breaking. Jake was trying to force open my side window. I could hear Megan screaming that I stole all her stuff and was trying to control her life. Then I heard my elderly neighbor, Mr. Wilson, yell that he'd already called the police. I went back to the front window and saw Jake grabbing Megan by the arm and dragging her towards their car. They were just getting in when the police arrived with lights flashing. The officers took my statement and I showed them the security footage I had of Megan and Jake entering my house when I wasn't there. I also had all the documentation showing I was the sole owner, that Megan never paid rent, and that there was no formal agreement between us. They said it was mostly a civil matter regarding her residency, but they arrested Jake for attempted breaking and entering and public intoxication. Megan was not happy. The next morning, my phone was blowing up again, but this time it was my cousin Denise, female, 35. She's always been like a big sister to both of us since we were kids. She was really angry, saying I made Megan homeless without warning, and how could I do that to family? I had to show her proof of everything. Screenshots of texts between Megan and Jake from times she claimed they were broken up, security camera footage of them taking stuff from my house, and the detailed timeline of all her employment lies. I hate having to monitor my own sister like this. I'm not a controlling person. But what was I supposed to do when stuff kept disappearing and her stories made no sense? I didn't want to be collecting evidence against my own sister, but I'm glad I did because otherwise no one would believe me. When I went through the storage unit with Megan's stuff more carefully, I found even more pawn shop receipts. And yeah, one of them was for my dad's watch. Seeing the date on it from like 3 months ago really hurt me. She's been lying this whole time, selling my stuff and living with Jake while pretending to be scared of him and working at a job that doesn't exist. Of course, the family is completely split now. My mom's sister Sharon, who has always favored Megan as the baby of the family, is refusing to speak to me and has offered to let Megan stay with her until she gets back on her feet. Meanwhile, my dad's brother and his wife are 100% on my side and said they wished I'd done this months ago. This whole thing is reminding me so much of when our parents got divorced when I was 16 and everyone took sides. I promised myself I wouldn't repeat those patterns in my own life, but here we are. It's exhausting, and all because I finally stood up for myself after months of being lied to and stolen from. The day after Jake got released, I saw them in the parking lot outside the police station having what looked like an intense argument. For a minute, I actually felt hopeful, like maybe Megan was finally standing up to him and ending things. But nope, saw on Instagram a few hours later that they were back together, posted with heart emojis like nothing happened. I've since blocked both of them on everything. Yesterday, Megan texted me saying she needed to talk to me about what really happened, and I stupidly agreed to meet her at a coffee shop. Guess who showed up with her? Jake. It was clearly an attempt to intimidate me or something. I walked out immediately. Now Megan's all over social media posting about how I'm controlling and jealous of her relationship with Jake, and that's why I threw her out. She's totally rewriting the narrative to make herself the victim. I've had like 5 mutual friends text me asking what's going on. I'm not going to blast her publicly. I've just told the truth to people who directly ask me. My friend Ryan called me yesterday and told me Megan has been borrowing money from other friends too. She told our friend Hannah she needed $300 for emergency dental work last month. Ryan said she asked him for $500 a few weeks ago for medical bills. The weird thing is, Hannah saw Megan and Jake at a bar the night she was supposedly getting her tooth fixed. I'm relieved to not be getting taken advantage of anymore, but I'm still worried about Megan. Despite everything, she's my sister, and I promised Dad I'd look after her. I've told Denise that I'd help Megan find a real job and maybe consider rebuilding our relationship if she'd just be honest about everything, get some help for whatever is causing her to lie like this, and get away from Jake's influence. But last night Sharon called me in tears asking if I thought Megan might have taken her iPad and laptop. Apparently they've disappeared since Megan started staying there. I didn't say I told you so, but yeah. Looks like Megan's patterns are continuing. And now the family members who were mad at ME are starting to see what I've been dealing with. I don't know what happens next. I'm just trying to take it one day at a time. Edit. Several people have asked about legal implications. I spoke with a lawyer today who confirmed that in my state, since there was no rental agreement and Megan never paid rent or utilities, she was legally considered a guest. I did technically need to give her formal notice, but the lawyer said it's unlikely she'd pursue that, given the circumstances and evidence of theft. Someone asked about the security system. I installed it about 3 months ago after the second time cash went missing from my room. It's just basic cameras at the entry points and one in the hallway. I wasn't trying to catch her. I honestly just wanted to see if someone else was getting in somehow. Until I saw her and Jake on the footage when she supposedly was at work. Holy crap. I just found out from my cousin that Jake got arrested again last night for violating the conditions of his release by contacting me through Megan. And apparently there are some other charges pending related to the stolen items they found in his car when they picked him up. This just keeps getting messier. For those asking how Megan had been paying for things all these months, if she wasn't actually working, as far as I can tell, it was a combination of pawning my stuff, borrowing money from friends with fake emergency stories, and whatever Jake was bringing in, which I'm guessing wasn't legal income based on his record. Now for the second update. So it's been about 2 months since my last update about changing the locks on my sister after discovering she'd been lying about literally everything. Fake job, fake breakup with Jake, stealing my stuff, etc. I honestly didn't expect to be posting again, but the last couple months have been wild, and I need to get this off my chest. First, the family stuff. After Megan moved in with my Aunt Sharon, who was initially super mad at me for kicking Megan out, things got predictable. Within like 2 weeks, Sharon called me saying her iPad and laptop were missing, along with some jewelry. I didn't even say anything, just stayed quiet on the phone. She finally sighed and was like, "I should have listened to you." Yeah, no shit. The weirdest part is that after Sharon confronted Megan about the missing stuff, both Megan and Jake basically vanished. Like, they stopped responding to family messages, deactivated their social media, the whole deal. Nobody heard from them for like a month. Even the family members who were still defending Megan were like, "Okay, this is weird," and started calling me to ask if I'd heard anything. Like, why would I know where she is? I'm the one who changed the locks on her. Anyway, I actually started to move on with my life, focusing on work, hanging out with friends who aren't constantly asking me for money or stealing my shit. I even started dating this woman Olivia that my coworker introduced me to. She's really great, has a stable job, her own place, doesn't lie about basic facts of her existence. When I was fixing up the house after Megan left, I had to call a plumber because the guest bathroom toilet kept backing up. Turns out she'd been flushing all kinds of shit she shouldn't have been. The plumber pulled out clumps of hair, makeup wipes, and God knows what else. Cost me nearly $600 to fix. This is just like our relationship. She creates messes and disappears, and I'm left cleaning them up. So about 6 weeks after the lock-changing incident, I get this call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer because I thought it might be Megan using someone else's phone, but I picked up. It was Marcus, Jake's older brother. I met him once years ago, so it was weird that he had my number. He says he wants to meet up to talk about Megan and Jake. My first thought was hell no, but he sounded concerned. I agreed to meet him at this diner near my office the next day. When I get there, Marcus tells me that Jake got arrested for credit card fraud and possession of stolen property. After Megan got kicked out of Sharon's place, they were staying in Jake's apartment, but got evicted for not paying rent. Marcus says things between Jake and Megan got really bad after the eviction because Jake kept blaming her for their money problems since she no longer had access to my resources. Here's where it gets wilder. One of the stolen credit cards Jake was using belonged to Sharon's elderly neighbor. They literally stole from a 78-year-old woman who lives next door to the aunt who took Megan in after I kicked her out. So I'm sitting there thinking Marcus is telling me all this because he's worried about Megan, right? Nope. Turns out he was hoping I'd help pay for better legal representation for Jake. I laughed out loud. I was like, "Are you serious right now?" He got all defensive saying Jake isn't as bad as everyone thinks, and that Megan was the one who got him into stealing. I just walked out. A few days later, I get a text from Megan. First contact in over a month. She says she's sorry for everything and wants to meet to explain. I know I should have just ignored it, but she's still my sister, you know? We met at a public park. She looked awful. Thinner, hair unwashed, wearing clothes that looked slept in. I asked where she'd been staying and she was super vague, just saying with friends. When I asked about work, she claimed to have an interview lined up but needed professional clothes. When I brought up what happened at Sharon's house, she immediately blamed Jake, saying he took stuff without her knowledge. I pointed out that this is her pattern. Blame everyone else, take no responsibility. She started crying, saying nobody in her life believes in her anymore. I asked about Dad's watch. She admitted they pawned it months ago, but swore she'd help me get it back somehow. The whole conversation was exhausting. She spent most of the time minimizing what she'd done, blaming Jake, and dropping hints about needing money, just until she gets back on her feet. I didn't give her money, but I did connect her with a social worker my friend knows who helps with housing and employment. Megan seemed grateful and promised to make things right, but I didn't have high hopes. Then 3 weeks ago, I get a call from a detective investigating Jake's case. Turns out during their investigation, police recovered a bunch of stolen items from some storage unit Jake had rented, including my dad's watch. The pawn shop never actually sold it. The detective said I could come pick it up once they processed it as evidence. The officer also mentioned that Megan had been cooperating with their investigation, giving them information about Jake's activities in exchange for immunity on some minor charges. 2 weeks ago, I get this desperate call from Megan late at night. She's sobbing, saying Jake got released on bail and is threatening her. She begs to come to my house just for one night because she has nowhere safe to go. I agreed, telling her she can come but can't stay long term. 30 minutes later, I get a notification from my security camera showing two people approaching my house. It's Megan and Jake. They were trying to trick me into letting them both in. I immediately called 911, explaining the situation and that Jake was violating his bail conditions. Through the camera, I could see Jake hiding behind a tree while coaching Megan on what to say. The police arrived within minutes and found Jake hiding in the bushes near my property. They arrested him for violating bail. Megan completely broke down, admitting Jake had forced her to call me as some kind of setup for revenge. The police report later revealed that Jake had intended to force his way into my house to take back what was owed to them. He had a knife on him when they arrested him. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I hadn't seen them both on camera. After this incident, Megan finally hit some kind of breaking point. With Jake back in jail, bail revoked this time, she agreed to enter a treatment program for codependency and substance abuse. I honestly had no idea about the substance abuse issues, but apparently that's where a lot of the money was going. About a month ago, I had a really honest conversation with Sharon, where we both admitted our roles in enabling Megan. We've always just rescued her rather than letting her face consequence. 2 weeks ago, Megan reached out through her counselor to arrange a mediated family session. She took responsibility for her actions without blaming Jake for once. She acknowledged her patterns of manipulation and lying. The counselor explained that Megan has issues with addiction, codependency, and possibly some undiagnosed mental health stuff. I'm not ready to fully trust her again, but I'm hopeful about her recovery. She's been working at a grocery store for over a month now, which is the longest she's held a job in years. I've made it clear that while I'll support her recovery emotionally, she needs to establish her own independent living situation when she finishes the treatment program. The whole thing has left me with mixed feelings. I'm relieved I got Dad's watch back. I'm glad Jake is facing legal consequences. I'm hopeful about Megan's treatment, but I'm also just sad about how damaged our relationship is and how many chances I gave her that she threw away. I guess changing those locks, despite those 19 missed calls that followed, was the first step in breaking this destructive pattern between us. Sometimes the hardest thing is to stop rescuing someone you love. Edit. A lot of people are asking about Jake's sentencing. His trial is next month, but from what the detective told me, with his prior record and the credit card fraud charges, he's looking at several years. I'll update if I hear anything definitive. Someone asked how Marcus got my number. I think he probably got it from Megan's phone, or maybe from one of our mutual family members. I didn't actually ask him how he found me.